Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is a Friday. This is According to Callus. And tonight we're going to review lessons from 2020 and now 2021 going into the 2022 elections. And it's not exactly what you might think it is. If you care to find out, come join me on the podcast. This is the intro. This is According to Callus, and I will see you on the podcast, or in this case, the other side. So, a couple lessons learned. One, just because they say you're on your team doesn't make them on your team. What do I mean? When you support a moderate, they always let you down. When you work with a moderate, they always sell you out. And you may say, oh, Stephen, that's not fair. You shouldn't be using those vast generalities to paint everybody in a negative light. Those people are our friends. Those people, they're on our team. You're right. They are. Perhaps we might ought to reconsider what it means to be on a team. Lesson number 3. People will do anything if you tell them it's for their own good. Or it's for the children, if you will. But we already kind of knew this, but they took it to new heights in the last year and a half. I will elaborate later. I think lesson number 4 is going to be, don't be surprised and don't get angry when they let you down. Just look for another option. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Lesson number 1. They always let you down. You know, I'm going to avoid naming anybody by their actual name, though if you know anything about the politics of the area, you can very easily figure out who I'm speaking of. I only do that so that they're not tagged, and I have at least a little plausible deniability. So you have somebody who was a conservative stalwart until he got that next promotion. And then he proceeded to spend all his time going across the aisle, trying to be a good friend to the opponent, trying to work together. Well, quite frankly, I don't think any of us really sent that person to do that job. I'm pretty sure we expected we were going to get more of the same. I'm pretty sure we expected that the same guy that had a spine, that would stand for things and would get things done, wouldn't then get the next rung up the ladder only to turn into a total wuss. And, you know, maybe that's not fair. Maybe not a total wuss. But I would have expected more from a guy that wore leather. I would expect more from a guy that had an eagle on his chest at one point. I don't understand how you think voting to remove monuments in any way, shape, or form is a good thing. I mean, even Donald Trump understood that if you allowed for the Confederate monuments to be removed, it was only a short matter of time before they came after the Revolutionary War people. It was only a short matter of time before they came after another monument that may be important to you. So just hiding behind the idea, well, they're just going to pull down Democrat statues. Big whoop. That's not the point. It was never the point. Now, presumably at some point, you studied strategy. Presumably at one point you understood the art of war. Presumably at one point you understood tactics. So I would like to know, where in any of those studies did it say you should just give that one to your enemy? And when I say enemy, let's be fair. Those people don't necessarily all want us dead, though a good chunk of them do. So let's just call them opponents for the duration of this here podcast. So when you keep giving in and giving them this win, that win, all you end up doing is losing more. Whether you pull out all the stops to get that person back to Austin. And when they campaigned, they didn't even identify themselves as one of you. In fact, most of their campaign literature ignored the very point that they were one of us. And yet we were expected to donate, promote, block walk, and endorse that. Now, I understand there are a good number of people that are afraid because, well, it's gone purple. Well, we don't have the demographics we once had. Well, yeah, why do you think that is? Could that be because you let the demographics be tweaked? You let the demographics be torqued by the very guy that you got elected into the municipal race that sold us out. Now, this is not unique to Plano or McKinney or even Allen. This is a common occurrence. They move up the rung. They sell us the bill of goods, but they're really just weak-willed moderates. Or worse yet, they're self-serving, selfish jerks. And I'm not sure what the difference is sometimes because, I kind of find it challenging to be excited by somebody that goes to work for us and then can't bother to do what we've asked them to do. And then has the unmitigated gall to say, well, we didn't really hear from you. Well, we really didn't have any direction from you. We really didn't understand what it was that the grassroots wanted. We wanted to keep the governor happy. Well, cry me a freaking river. You wanted the big chair. Now do something with it. You're supposed to have our back. We had your back. But, again, the moderate lets you down. Now, those are just 2 examples. I'm sure we could find many more. Now let's talk about the moderates that'll stab you in the back. Or, better yet, betray you. So, I've taken a little heat for the fact that I've been willing to talk about Texas. Fact of the matter is I wouldn't say myself that I'm a strong supporter of Texas. I would say that I am definitely open to that option. I would say that I definitely support expanding the education behind it, building an understanding of what it would entail. I want for everybody who might be in favor of it to understand exactly what's at play, and those that don't know to have a better understanding of what's involved. And for those that are opposing, I think most of them are doing it because of a false dichotomy or because they've been told that, well, you just can't do that. Well, really? That's not the way that works. Pretty sure the colonists were told, well, you can't leave the Great Britain Empire. You're part of the British Empire, which goes around the world. The sun never sets. You can't leave. I'm pretty sure the Texians and the Tejanos were told, hey, y'all can't leave the Mexican Empire. You're part of the Mexican Empire that's going to go on forever. Yeah, well, that didn't work out so well either. Or even, before that, the Louisiana Purchase, right? That happened because Jefferson kind of tweaked things a little bit, but played within the rule book, if you will, and doubled the country because France was going under yet another revolution. Or, Spain, they sold us Florida because they just couldn't deal with it anymore. So, empires come together, they come apart, and then they reform. And I don't see the pain. I don't see the weeping and gnashing of teeth that should be caused by people openly talking about, well, what would it look like if we broke apart? Yet, I'm willing to fade that little heat. I'm willing to potentially take the hit on my respectability meter, if you will. But when you got people that run around calling people traitors, they run around saying it's seditious, they run around talking smack about somebody that is legit, maybe you ought to consider who this person is and whether or not they have any credibility. Maybe you should look at what they've done and who they've endorsed. So we have a prime example going on right now. And this is, again, nothing new, very common. The moderates sell out the conservatives at the drop of a hat. And they go and find somebody who voted in Republican primaries and then brand them as a Republican, or brand them as, better yet, a conservative Republican, when in fact we know they are nothing of the sort, but they give them cover. Why do these moderates do that? Because they're really not on our team. They're really not helping. They're really manipulating and interfering in the progress that we could be making. So you have a clear choice down in Plano, right? You've got someone that's left of center, someone that's right of center. And, in the municipal races, we are allegedly nonpartisan, which we know that's not true, but we at least play along with that still. And we have finally gotten our skin in the game as the Republican Party, right? And some of our Republican brethren, contrary to what the party agreed to do, contrary to what their duties are as precinct chairs, have decided to go and undermine and work against the party which they're supposed to be a part of. Now, if this were to happen on the Democrat side, the Democrats wouldn't put up with it. The Democrats would censure and probably toss them out. The Democrats would make them persona non grata. The Democrats would not tolerate such insolence. They actually have some party discipline. Now, I know what you're saying, right? The Republican Party has on the platform, or at least put out a resolution, that we should have a referendum on Texas. So I'm well within the bounds of advocating discussion of that topic. The Texas platform calls for, backing off some of the egregious drug laws. The Texas platform calls for constitutional carry. Yet these very same people that we send to go work for us and advocate for us and do the platform, to do their duty to support the platform, don't do it. So then their little acolytes, if you will, here in town, the ones that even get the title precinct chair, they're the ones that are selling us out at the local level. How does that work? Well, they support people that support policies that spike the demographics in not a positive way. Now, when I moved here, Plano was one way, Allen was one way, McKinney was one way, and Frisco was one way. Now, you can argue whether better or worse, we've gotten significantly larger, but when you have a disproportionate representation of people that are not homeowners, that are not business owners, not good employees, they don't have the same skin in the game. They don't really have any interest. In fact, they tend to vote Democrat. So one would ask themselves, why would a Republican, a so-called Republican, continue to advocate for policies that include building more apartment buildings, that include, and the funny thing is they're expensive apartments. And these expensive apartments aren't serving the very people that they say need the affordable housing and need to have less expensive housing. Funny how that works. Oh, they'll subsidize it, right? They'll create that whole little Section 8 business, and they'll put a bunch of people in a neighborhood that really are kind of out of place. And I've kind of felt like a fish out of water from time to time in different places I've been. So I can only imagine what it would be like to be plopped down in the middle of a group of people that you have absolutely nothing in common with. I can only imagine what it would be to, say, create a little section where you've got 10 families that came from a different part of Texas or a different part of the country and don't fit in with the rest of their neighborhood. And they're kind of forced to only spend time with each other because they can't relate to their neighbors. I don't think that's exciting. Kind of reminiscent of the busing debacle of my childhood. People flock together and stay together for reasons. They don't have to be good reasons. They can even be bad reasons, but they're still the reasons those people choose to be around each other. And when you upend that, when you change the social makeup or the demographic makeup of an area, you're doing it for a specific reason. So whether your motivations are pure, and I don't think they are, but for argument's sake, let's say they are, can you not see the tragic outcome of your meddling in people's lives? Can you not understand that you're not really doing people any favors? Indeed, as you change the makeup of a city, demographically or just population, right? A dramatic population shift will do the same. You're not doing your city any favors. You're not being helpful. And the same folks that, back this, you got to ask yourself why. They're basically the same moderates that work against us. They work to put in weak-willed moderates that sell us out a little bit at a time. They just tell us that was the best deal they could get. They sell us out just a little bit at a time. So we don't wake up and we don't see what's happening until it's too late. Now, in many ways, it may be too late for Plano. Although the people in Plano are fighting back quite effectively. And it may be too late for Allen, but the people have fought back. Indeed, they won one race outright, and they have 2 runoffs, which should go quite well, I hope. Now, unfortunately, in McKinney, we were not so blessed. Frisco, on the other hand, has a mixed bag. So, we have to get our act together. We have to pay attention to the people that say they're on our team, but then sell us out. If you have a good, solid candidate that actually has principles and wants to do the things that you want done, why would you then go and support the weak-willed, moderate milquetoast sellout for re-election when you've got them on the ropes? Why would you sell out your Republican brethren? Why would you continue to sell the false lie that you're a conservative, or at least a quasi-conservative, that you're a good Republican, and, well, this person voted in the Republican primary, so they must be conservative. They must be Republicans. No. That's not the way it works. Up until about 2 election cycles ago, everybody voted in the Republican primary. The Democrats wanted the weakest Republican, and the Republicans generally wanted the best Republican. And we got a mixed bag. And some of those people are in state rep, state senator. Some of those people are elected in the school board and particularly the city council. And this happens because our moderates sell us out. Now, I don't hate moderates. Most of them are quite nice, and I get along well with them. And I find them generally pleasant to deal with. But why we would cede them the authority to determine what makes a good candidate or what makes a good conservative or even what makes a good Republican is beside me. We have objective standards that they're supposed to meet. We have objective ideas. And that was the premise on which we came up for endorsing candidates. So if a candidate does not achieve endorsement from the Republican Party, how is it that we have Republican precinct chairs running around endorsing somebody that's not endorsed by the party? How do they get to keep their seat? There must be a way to rein them in. Maybe they need to be censured. I mean, they're an elected official, right, as a precinct chair. Well, we have to respect that. We have to allow for differences of opinion because even the Democrats can't get 100%, right? No matter how strict their party discipline is, no matter how robotic or non-thinking some of their people are, there are still people that say no, or I want to do this, or I don't think this is quite socialist enough. Yet, we tolerate this, and we do it at our own peril. We have people that run around and try and redefine what it means to be conservative, what it means to be a patriot, what it means to be a Republican, and we tolerate it. And I don't know why. I don't know why we allow this. Now, I'm not the county chair. I know the county chair. I like the county chair. I support the county chair. And I know he's got his hands full. I know there's plenty of fish to fry, if you will. Lots of eggs in that basket. He can only do so many things. And quite frankly, there's a lot of triage going on. Yet, the very folks that are aware of this treachery have their hands tied. They can't deal with it. Now, I'm not suggesting that we take out this couple individuals that constantly undermine what the party's trying to do and beat the snot out of them. No. We're way beyond that. We don't do that. That's something from high school, middle school. I say we censure them. I say we put them on warning. I say that if they continue to work against the party, they need to be stripped of whatever authority, whatever power, whatever committees. They need to be put to pasture. Oh, they're an elected official. But just like the Congress doesn't have to seat an elected official if they think they're not appropriate, seems to me that we could change the rules in the Republican Party to not seat somebody that's not a good Republican. The Democrats do it. They don't seat Democrats that aren't Democrats. In fact, they are quite good about kicking out their own. And I don't want this to turn into a purity contest, right? I would fail the purity contest just like most of us would. But unless you've got a number of violations of the party platform or you're actively working against the party-endorsed candidates, there's plenty of room for disagreement. Just like when you walk into a boardroom, the board makes a decision. It's everybody's job on that board to back the decision. If they don't like it, they can resign. If they don't like it, they bite their darn tongue until the next time it comes up for reconsideration. They don't actively undermine what that board is doing. And that's what our executive committee is. That is a board that's supposed to run the county party. And if you can't go along with the decisions from the party, if you can't suck it up and deal with the fact that you didn't get what you wanted, there's the door. And I say this knowing that there are plenty of things the party's done over the years that I've not been enthusiastic with. There are plenty of candidates that have run that I've not been enthusiastic about. Now, when that's what the primaries are for, right? You run the best Republican against the other guy's best Republican and may the best one win. Hopefully it's the most conservative, but sometimes we don't get what we want. But we all rally around the person that carries our banner. And why is it that when those guys get in that office, they can't carry our banner? So that's lesson number 2. And at this point, I don't even remember what 3 and 4 are. I've been going on for 20 minutes talking about being let down by the moderates, right? We can't afford to let the weakest link determine what we do. We can't afford to have these weak sisters determine what the party, what conservatism is, what patriotism is, what it is to defend liberty. We can't let those people make those determinations. Okay. Now that I'm off script, because I forgot what lesson 3 and 4 is, I'm so sorry. I've got to take better notes. Here's the thing. You can't make a deal with somebody that won't uphold their end of the bargain, right? So I guess technically it's not far off, right? You can't go into a fight and fight fair when the other side's not fighting fair. Now, a friend of mine gave me the analogy, you wouldn't get into a boxing ring with your 10-ounce or 8-ounce gloves and the other guy's wearing brass knuckles and expect to win. Unfortunately, what happens is we do this all the time. We send our candidate in, we got our Marcus de Queenberry rules or whatever they're called, and we go play by these rules. The other side doesn't honor rules. The other side does whatever the heck they want. And we don't call them on it. We don't fight them on it. Oh, a couple of people will prattle on, but they don't do anything legally. They don't go after and make them pay. Yet, the moment one of our conservatives or one of our patriots fights back, maybe gets a little dirty, maybe gets his hands dirty, right? We're talking philosophically or metaphorically, not legitimately going out and beating somebody up or digging in the muck. We're just talking about fighting fire with fire. Those same moderates sell him out. Those same moderates go and tie his hands. Those same weak sisters go and run around bleeding about, oh, I don't think this is fair. Oh, we shouldn't have done that. They sell us out. Now, that's not to condone what sometimes gets done, right? Sometimes we have people that are a little overzealous. Sometimes we have people, particularly not the candidates, but just their supporters that kind of go a little past the line. Those people need to be reined in, but reined in on a personal level, in a private level. We don't have to have these same group of weak sisters getting all over social media or on the radio, wringing their hands about how terrible it is somebody stood up for their candidate. They're not doing us any favors. The moderates, if they had their chance, would probably tie our boxer's arms behind his back, then put chains or shackles on his legs so he can't maneuver around. Meanwhile, allow that opponent, the Democrat, if you will, with brass knuckles and a helmet, go in and proceed to beat the snot out of our guy. Why? Because it would just be unseemly if they were to go negative. It would just be unseemly if they were to fight fire with fire. That would be beneath us. Yeah, that's all well and good when you're in a fair fight. And when has there been a fair fight in any recent history that I am aware of? The answer is none. None that I'm aware of. I mean, other than the happy fest between Judge Payton and Candy Noble when they ran in the primary, I can't think of the last time there's been no dissent, no argument in a primary, much less a general election. That was like a powder puff league primary. I mean, hey, that's okay. They're two similar people policy-wise, right? Obviously dissimilar on presentation, but they're both friendly. They both get along with people. They're both quite respected. I respect both of them. Don't necessarily agree with everything that they would promulgate, but that's another story. I think they're both good Republicans. They went into the little powder puff primary, and really, it's like nothing I've seen before. I can't explain it. If you're going to go to that time, effort, and energy to run for an office, why wouldn't you at least fight for it? Don't know. Don't have an answer. And like I said, I like both of them. I'm not trying to be rude to them. I'm sure they had their own reasons. And I suppose when you're running against somebody you like and respect, you kind of have to play nice. But I wonder, coming up in 2022, what's going to happen? I mean, there's already a chorus of people calling for a congressman to be primaried. Now, if you would have asked me 2 to 4 years ago, I was kind of quite happy with our congressman. He's made some things, or he's done some things that I just don't get. I don't understand. I don't understand why you wouldn't have the fortitude to object. You're not violating the Constitution. That was the story I got. You're not saying that we reject the election result. We're saying we wish to investigate. But, better yet, we should sell out our very own supporters. We should let those people be interrogated by the FBI for the so-called insurrection that never happened. Yet we did not a dang thing for everything else that went on in 2020. The left riots all over the country, and they get a free pass. A couple of people on the right went into a room uninvited. Didn't really do anything. Oh, in fact, the remainder of their friends stopped the place from being burned, stopped the place from getting its windows broken. And, oh, by the way, the guy that allegedly died from getting hit in the head by something, he stroked out. Or it was a heart attack, one or the other. It was medical causes, not associated with anything else. Apparently, he was a Trump supporter, too. And the only person that got shot, well, that was another Trump supporter, a.k.a. protester. Now, granted, she was trying to enter a room uninvited, but I'm guessing we had less than lethal options available there. Yet, nothing's come about with that. No. I don't understand what's going on in D.C., and quite frankly, it's way beyond my control. But I do have a pretty good understanding of why we can't get anything done in Texas and why we have the same piss-poor results every 2 years out of the House, out of the Senate. And quite frankly, we ain't got good results out of the congressional delegation that we send to D.C. anymore. Sadly. It's because we keep supporting the weaker candidate. We keep buying somebody that looks really good on paper and they just don't deliver. You can't make deals with people that won't honor them, and you can't go into a fight with your opponent and expect them to fight fair when they have a long track record of never fighting fair. And when your weakest link is over on your team crying and whining about how you fought back and selling you out and giving aid and comfort to your opponent, maybe that's the person that needs to be punished. That's the person that needs to be dealt with, not the person that crossed the line. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had some of those conversations with people that have crossed the line. I've asked them to tone it down. I've asked them to back off, but I did it in a private way, and I did it respectfully. And I even told them, I understand where you're coming from, and I largely agree with this, but you're working against us. You got to think about some of these things. There's some long-term strategy at play. Now, the long-term strategy of constantly giving in, constantly knuckling under, that's not a strategy. That's just submission. That's just the long retreat. An orderly retreat is still a retreat. If you refuse to redoubt, if you refuse to dig in and fight back, what's the point? You know, we have what's supposed to be one of the reddest counties in the state, and obviously we aren't any longer because we've been sold out by our moderates. Some would say we're pink. Some would say we're reddish purple. I don't believe any of that's true. I believe the majority of that is that our Republican conservative voters are just not excited about the weak sisters that we send down to Austin, that we send to D.C. to represent us. They do a piss poor job, and we continue to reward them with re-election. Now, to be fair, we don't know what the final outcome of this legislative session is going to be. And I have to be completely objective when I go through the Legislative Priority Committee's role in grading them. I am just one member. The chairman, I'm going to sit down. We're going to line out. These are all the bills that fall under the priorities. These are what our state reps and state senators did in relation to those priorities. This is how they're being graded. There is going to be a level playing field. There were 8 priorities. There were a number of bills per priority. And depending on how they voted on those bills for the priorities, is going to be where they get their grade. And like I've said before, I truly hope that they can all have high B's and A's. I really do. But if we're honest with each other, I think we know that's probably not going to be the case. If we're honest with each other, we're going to see that we're going to get more milquetoast, barely conservative anything out of the House and the Senate. Indeed, they're playing shenanigans again already yesterday on adjourning the House and quote-unquote protest. Now, I can't tell you what the right answer is. I can't tell you who the best candidate is. But what I can tell you is, once the grading's over, once we've got our pass-fail system in place, or our letter system in place, the electorate of Collin County is going to have a hard decision. Do you take the easy road and send the weak sister who's more than likely going to win the re-election in the general? Or do you vote them out? Do you put in an unproven, untested, potentially neophyte elected person in that spot? Do you run somebody who's got just a little bit of name recognition, a little bit of spine, but no bankroll? Do you run a guy that's got money, but it's unknown? Do you run a guy that's got money, a solid track record, but is not currently in office? Do you run somebody who is just a little edgy, but isn't afraid of a fight? I don't know. I don't know what all the answers are to this. But I do know that regardless of what the outcome is of the grade, if we continue to send the same people back, we're going to continue to get more of not much of anything at all. And if that's okay, if the electorate prefers that because they refuse to take the challenge, they refuse to put in the fight to win a primary, I can't help them. In fact, if that's the case, my work may very well be done. I've been working on videos and, podcasts now for, close to a year, I guess. I don't expect to win every battle. I do know that eventually my team wins the war. But in the meantime, we're supposed to occupy. And when we choose people that won't go to the battle for us, how is that helpful? When we continue to tolerate people that sell us out, work against us, how is that helpful? When we continue to allow the enemy within, how can we ever expect to win? Obviously, I didn't get to the fourth lesson learned. I'm just going to choose to wrap it up. I've run long. Calhoun County, heck, all of Texas, we have some serious questions that we need to answer. Are we okay with the tiny little incremental crumbs that are given to us every other year? Are we okay with the orderly retreat in D.C.? Are we okay with being let down year after year after year? Or are we willing to take a risk? Are we willing to put our lives and sacred honor and fortunes on the line? Are we willing to follow somebody that's going to put his money where his mouth is? Are we willing to follow somebody that's going to invest his time, energy, efforts into getting a job that quite frankly doesn't pay very well, that quite frankly is probably quite the burden, unless you're an attorney or a real estate guy, or in some cases other jobs where you can miss work for 6 months out of whack. The question is, are we willing to take that challenge? Are we willing to take that risk? I know my gut answer is abso-freaking-lutely. But, in fairness, to be objective, I'm asking everybody to just be patient. We've got a little over a month. We'll have the official Calhoun County GOP legislative priorities grade report for our state reps and state senators for how they represented the priorities and did they do what we asked them to do. And that grade, good, bad, or otherwise, is going to be how I make my decision on who needs to go, if anybody. Now, I know there's friends and maybe some family members out there that their immediate instinctive answer is throw the bums out, get rid of all of them. Well, yeah, we could do that, but do you really want to have 7 primary challenges? Spreading all that money and effort and, quite frankly, energy all over the county, pooled into a bunch of races that are long shot at best? Or would you prefer to be a little more strategic? Going after those weakest links, reminding the electorate all the time of their record and what they failed to do and why they are the weakest link. Goodbye. Again, keep your powder dry. The time is coming. The time is not now. And I, Stephen Callis, will go now. Thank you. Have a good night. And I will see you on the other side.